Sandra all the time is here with the cold hard truth. She's the ears and the eyes for me and you. Every day, everyone want to hear from Sandra. And every time on the air, she's getting better. Tell your sister, tell your brother, tell your mama to call Sandra in the morning and in the evening. They always calling Sandra. And when they start fighting, they calling Sandra.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth. Welcome to another episode with more truth-telling, more problem-solving, and of course, more tea spilling than ever before. Sit back, students, grab your tea and turn up the volume because class is now in session. Call in at 936-2626 because your voice matters. Share your opinion on issues that matter the most to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello, beautiful people. Rise and shine, honey child. It is showtime. Welcome one and welcome all. How you guys doing? Got some guests coming into the studio today. So we're going to get started pronto, right on time, as you can see. Let's get this bus on the road. What we say? The school bus is on its way, folks. It's on its way. All right. Hope you guys had a restful evening. I'm still not going to bed when I should be. Lord Jesus. I don't know what to say. I have good intentions. And then next thing I know, it's midnight. And then 12:30. And then 1 o'clock. And I'm still not sleeping. I got to do better. I even set my phone to tell me at 10 o'clock, okay, start to wind down. It's bedtime. And I'm still not winding down. All right, I'm going to work on it. We all have different things that we need to work on. And, the orthopedic surgeon, bless his heart, was telling me, he's like, your rest is so important. Impacts everything, even your joints and stuff. So make sure you got your balanced diet. You've got, you're getting enough rest at night. You're getting enough sleep because sleep is regenerative and all this good stuff. And I'm just like, ugh. When he mentioned sleep, I was like, we in trouble now, honey chill. But we will continue to work on it. You get up every day and you have a consideration of your shortcomings and you thought, all right, you think to yourself, all right, I can do better tonight. Tonight's the night that I'm going to do better. Actually, 1 week I went to bed. I think I was in bed by 10:30, which is early for me. And I got to tell you the truth, by 3 o'clock in the morning, I felt like I wanted to get up. I was like, go back to sleep, honey child. What are you doing getting up? So, yeah, I think I got to do some rewiring of the brain or something. Anywho, how are all of my beautiful folks doing this morning? We're going to talk about energy conservation. Mr. Wayne Panton should be joining us. Yesterday, he had a urgent situation with his constituency. So he was not able to join us. So yeah, unfortunately, one of his constituents having some issues that he needs to assist with. So hopefully now we can hear from him today. All right, we'll keep an eye on it. Right. So yesterday we left off the show talking about really the broader question of what is and who is a Caymanian. And I don't feel like we're ever going to have this resolved. Depending on who you are and what your life experiences are, I think everybody is going to have an opinion on this. And our opinions are probably going to vary significantly as well. It's a tough topic, I'll tell you, because everyone can probably think of a situation where someone, and when I say everyone, I mean multi-generational Caymanians can all think of a situation where someone isn't a multi-generational Caymanian, but because they are near and dear to us, we are like, yeah, man, they're a Caymanian. Our brain conveniently forgets that, nope, dad is from Cuba, mama from Jamaica, or this place or that place. In the ideal world, once someone has, demonstrated that they want to be here and they want to be a Caymanian, you think that that would be enough. But I'm afraid that what is happening here is because we have, I'm just grabbing my tension mat, because we have such a small environment. And you know what? It's not even, I don't even know that it's that, because you will find certain sections of the US population do the exact same thing. I mean, you can become a US citizen. I don't think it's as bad though. Like when you become a citizen, people accept that citizens can be very, very diverse. Like, most people in the States don't talk about multi-generational Americans. You know what I mean? Like, oh, my daddy was from Mississippi and my great great nana, she was from North Carolina. You tend not to really have those conversations. And I think people feel it a little bit differently, again, depending on the size of maybe small town America versus larger, more metropolitan areas. So the conversation came up in relation to a young lady who has been, recognized by the DART organization and the Ritz-Carlton as the first Caymanian hotel manager being appointed. And, I had a chat with someone last night, and I think it's fair to say that I don't know this young lady actually at all. She looks a little bit familiar, but I don't know her. And so I don't want this conversation to be about her, because I know some of you are already like trying to look at her social media profiles and you're like, well, Sandy, it says right here in her Facebook that she's from Maypen. And I'm like, okay. She's obviously Jamaican. Somebody else said, well, she still has a Jamaican accent. Listen, I doubt that that's going anywhere. If you're Jamaican, I don't know, sometimes they can kind of drop it conveniently. But the truth of the matter is, most of them, that accent is going to be there for life, no matter what they do, right? Just honestly speaking, you always hear it. And so I don't really want it to be about trying to castigate her. I mean, I've heard that she's been here for, I don't know, some 20 years or whatever, plus maybe, that she does a phenomenal job at the Ritz-Carlton, that she's really proven herself. It's not like somebody gave this position to her. She has really proven herself in the position. The person was saying to me that even during the last storm, Mark, what's the other general manager's name there? Mark Vander, no. Which one is he again? I always get them confused. But anyway, that Mark. There's two of them that work within the DART organization. I don't want to confuse the names, but that he was off island, and she did a phenomenal job handling all of the elements of disaster management. Mark Longevin. The other Mark is the one who's over at the DART organization. Yeah. And so I was having a think about it. They said, she did an amazing job handling all the elements of disaster management and all this kind of stuff. So I don't want to really say anything about her. I don't know anything about her. I don't know anything about her situation. But I think there's a couple of things really and truly that are going on here. Number one, we have to recognize, and I think the DART organization and the Ritz-Carlton have to recognize, that there is a certain reputation that the Ritz-Carlton has. And perhaps it has that reputation in large part because of how people view and see Mark. I mean, not for nothing, but he's not the most popular person amongst the local Caymanian population. And again, I don't know him. I've seen him kind of here and there, but the comments that I've always received about him, he doesn't seem to have a real huge fan base. Let me put it that way. And what I mean by that is people will say, here's one of the comments that I got, for example, when someone said to me, wait a minute, she's not Caymanian. Why is the Ritz-Carlton trying to pull a fast one on us? Because, they don't even like to hire the interns that do training there. And Mark has a reputation for not wanting to hire Caymanians. So I thought about it. This person said, Ritz don't even hire the Caymanian students that they give scholarships to. And so, yes, I have thought about it. This person said she's Jamaican, not a generational Caymanian. Generational Caymanians continue to be marginalized and blocked from tourism jobs. And from what I can remember, she even has a very strong Jamaican accent. Okay, listen, I want to congratulate this young lady because, first of all, I think as women, we all recognize how difficult, just as a woman, I don't care where you're from, how difficult it is to get into management positions on merit, not on your back like some people, but on actual merit. So I want to congratulate her, regardless of where she's from. I think, honestly, if I were their PR team, I would have pulled back a little bit on the first Caymanian hired press release. I really would have. And this is, I don't work for the DART organization. If they ever want me in PR, do give me a call. Maybe I could help you out here and there. But I think that's the first thing, is I wouldn't have really gone with that position. You could have said she's probably the first woman at the Cayman location. That would have been perfectly fine. And then you could have talked about, how she's had, to be fair, there's no difference in law of how you acquire Cayman status. Once you have it, you're quote unquote a Caymanian, right? And legally, there's no such thing in law as a Caymanian. To be clear, you are a status holder. But in the functional world, we see a difference. So it always gets me to thinking about, how we treat people who fall into this category of not being multi-generational Caymanians. And even amongst ourselves, I've heard of some people, they'll be like, oh, well, I come from the McTaggart family, and we can trace their multi-generational back 8, 9, 10 generations, longer than anybody else. And it's like, is this a pissing competition? Like, at some point, it's like, huh? Okay, so you're more Caymanian than a Macfield, or like, what are you trying to say? Like, it, you kind of go, huh? And that's how ridiculous the conversation can get. And I've seen it where people are talking about their Caymanianism. I've seen as well athletes and other people who represent our country as Caymanians being marginalized. And so they're Caymanians when they are doing something good, when they're swimming for us, they're running, they're winning medals, they're doing all this kind of stuff. They're Caymanians. And then the second they get in trouble, they're in court. Oh, no, Sandy, he not no Caymanian. Look, his papa, Jamaican, make sure he not one of us. And I'm kind of like, weren't we happy to count them for the Olympics or for Carifta or all these other things? Like it is, it's such a sliding conversation when you start going down that path. And so a lot of times I am bothered when I have to even have this conversation. I got to tell you, I'm not the most comfortable having it, because I think we're opening Pandora's box for people to start getting in their feelings and really spreading a lot of hate in our community, which is something that I honestly, I'm just not about. I have a lot of friends who are in the international circles from all over. Some have acquired Cayman status and some haven't. And I don't lead with that. Like, when I first meet someone, I'm not like, oh yeah, show me your Cayman papers, or are you really a Caymanian? Let's talk about your multi-generationalism or whatever. There are actually people that I have had conversations with and I talk with and whatever. And I legit thought that they were Caymanian, and they're like, no, I'm not a Caymanian. I'm like, you're not? I said, well, you sure look like us. and you sure sound like us. And, even the project that I'm doing, hashtag I am Caymanian, the whole point of that segment is to show the diversity of our people. Like, you can't pigeonhole Caymanians and say, we only look a particular way, we only sound a particular way. In fact, sometimes I chuckle and I remember when I came back to Cayman, gosh, I'm starting to age myself with these dates now. Way back in 1996, I applied. It would have been in probably the early 2000 or so, maybe 98, 99, 2000. I applied for to become a notary. And so, the application process is you apply, you send it to I think it goes to like the AG's office, but it's cabinet that looks at your application. And I remember that they actually denied my application at the time. And one of the reasons they put in there is that I wasn't a Caymanian. And I was like, what? I'm not a Caymanian? I'm like, since when? Because I had a Catron. Nobody knew who I was. What kind of name is that? Well, they just looked at it. They didn't even read the application, because had they read it, they would have seen that I actually provided evidence of the fact that I am a Caymanian, but they didn't look at it that carefully. They just looked at the name and made an assumption. Okay, she's not a Caymanian. And I'm thinking, what the heck? What do I have to do around here to prove that I'm a Caymanian? I remember speaking to Frank McField about it afterwards, and he's like, well, I'll interpret it in my way, because I'm sure he didn't say honey child, but he might as well have said it. Honey child, you got to remember now, there's 3 things you have going against you. Number 1, you are a Caymanian. Number 2, you're a woman. And number 3, you're Black. And I was just like, none of those things can I change, or do I want to change? And what does that have to do about my application for a notary? I'm just like, what? Anyway, needless to say, I appealed their decision, applied again, and I got it, because I'm like, y'all need to pay attention to the applications that you are vetting. Here's the other reason why I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this situation, is because probably unlike a good portion of Caymanians, I have actually lived in somebody else's country as a foreign national in their country. I'm not talking about going to the UK, where we still have the benefit of that UK passport, and I guess largely you're accepted there as a UK citizen or whatever, right? I'm talking about going although I was a child, going as a migrant, completely legal, on a student visa, having a different little Caymanian accent when I went there. The little kids didn't understand me. They didn't know what I was saying. They were like, where are you from? We don't understand you, girl. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm speaking English. Oh, girl. They didn't understand that thick Caymanian accent. They were like, yeah, we don't know what you're speaking. What foreign language is that? And I was like, Lord Jesus. So, as a kid, 9-year-old, I had to assimilate very, very quickly into their community. And it meant making some adjustments, including the way that I spoke, so that people could understand me. Yes, that was required for survival in the, 3rd grade, 4th grade, whatever it was back then. And we were all the way out in basically the country for Tampa, about the boonies, honey chill, boondocks. Being bused an hour just to get to school was wild. And so I've had the experiences of, having migrated, having had to deal with some degree of prejudice because you were migrant. And also, to be quite frank, even when I remember when I was getting ready to go to university, my aunt kept me in a student visa all of those years. And then it presented a real practical problem, because as an international student for the purposes of university, all of a sudden, although I had been there at that point for 10 years, I'm now discovering that, oops, guess what? You have to pay international fee, and you don't get the benefit of in-state tuition despite how long you've been here. And I was like, what? I didn't even know what that was all about. So we had to figure that out. We had to hire a lawyer, which he did it pro bono for me after I won a scholarship through his law firm. But it was just all kind of like madness. So I sympathize with migrants in a way because I've had a degree of experience with it, right? I was a kid, but I understood the reason why I went to the US was to give me better opportunities that at the time were simply not available for me here in the Cayman Islands. That's the same reason a whole lot of people migrate all over the world. In theory, there is nothing wrong with doing it for those reasons. You still have to do it the right way. So I say all of that to say, you know, I do, when I think about and I have this conversation with people, maybe I'm looking at it from a slightly different perspective than the average person. Like I'm wearing a different kind of lens, a different kind of glass than everybody else because I've experienced it. I've lived in somebody else's country for 15 years. And I also know the necessity, as I think Shaka Zulu said here in the comment, the necessity to assimilate in that culture, in that environment, which I had to do. So a lot of people, I think, in Cayman, a lot of Caymanians, I understand the sentiments. I know why Caymanians are feeling marginalized. Some of it is a numbers game. Some of it is a lack of assimilation. And really feeling that people are coming here just to use us. They don't really have any desire to be here. But let me be very clear. Probably migration all over the world, 97% of the cases, most people are there to better their own plight in life. When I moved to the US, I was a kid, so I didn't really, have a whole lot of input in it. But even as I thought about it, as I became an adult and I was contemplating staying in the States, it was only when I found out Cayman had law school and I thought, maybe I should go back home and find my roots, right? But I could have very well have remained in the US forever and just visited every once in a while. And I would have been one of those Caymanians who came here, every couple of years and be like, hi, you people, Caymans, how y'all doing, honey child? I am a Caymanian, really, believe me. Forget the accent for a minute. It's me. So, and it wasn't really, it was about what are the better options for me. Let me be very, very honest, right? Now, when I moved back, there was a longing to return to my roots and to try to figure out my Caymanian side a bit because I had been so removed from it. So I have a love for Cayman that I can't have for the United States of America, no matter how long I've lived there. Let's just be honest, right? So when we say to people, come here and assimilate, yes, I understand that. But we also have to be realistic that we can't possibly be asking people to love our country as much or more than they love their own. That's just not how people feel about their birthplace. And again, I can speak to that because I was in that situation. America is a perfectly fine country, never really did me anything. I had opportunities there, especially educational opportunities that obviously my father felt like I couldn't get in Cayman. I think that it has changed the entire trajectory of my life without question. But I can't love America no matter what, like how I love Cayman. As Caymanians would say, this is where my navel string is buried. If you understand it, you understand it. And perhaps on the one side, it's illogical and I can't really explain it all of that well. And, it is what it is. A lot of times it also comes down to respect, right? So I always kind of felt like when I lived in the US that I also knew my place as a non-American citizen. Even when I got residency, there's a lot of conversations that I would really not engage in with Americans because I felt like, ultimately you're the citizen of this country. This is your country. I have an option. I can pick up and leave. As an American, your options are far less. And so I'm not going to engage with you about certain aspects like politics and so on of your country. But had I stayed there long enough, I'm sure that eventually I would have gotten citizenship and eventually I would have been very involved in politics there in the community and so on. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I was traveling through Miami, and I was talking to one of the Homeland Security people, gave him my documentation. I travel on my UK passport on the ESTA program, and he was talking to me, and he kind of threw me, I think he was purposely doing it, but he kind of threw me a little curveball. And he said, well, why don't you apply for American citizenship? And I said to him, why would I? I'm not even a resident anymore. Because he heard the accent, he knew that I had lived in the States for a really long time. And he was like, why don't you want to become an American? And I chuckled and I said, well, believe it or not everybody wants to become an American. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, excuse me. Good morning, Sandra. Just wanted to jump in on the conversation here. If I understood and heard you correctly, I think you said that we can't expect, let me use the word immigrants or migrants, we can't expect people coming to Cayman to love Cayman the way they love their own country. I completely agree and respect that sentiment. I, as a Caymanian, that's not what I'm asking an expatriate or migrant, immigrant, whatever they want to refer to themselves as. That's not what I am asking for them. And I don't think that that's what the vast majority of Caymanians are asking for. What we are asking for is for them to respect Cayman. I'll give you a few examples. I am so tired of hearing, well, in East Jabib, that's not how it's done. Well, in Canada, that's not how it would work. Well, if this were South Africa, I don't care what you do there. You're in my country. You have to respect my customs. You have to respect my rules. You have to respect my culture. I think that is what the vast majority of Caymanians are asking for. And when you have people who come here and blatantly disrespect the country, I've heard people say, Cayman is dog poop. We only here for the money. Pick your things up and leave.
Yeah.
Your things up and leave. No one asked you to come here, and chances are with that stinking thinking, you are not contributing positively to my society. You're not. So I think, like I said, I don't think it's a matter of I'm asking somebody to love Cayman as much as they love wherever they're from, but we're asking for you to put some respect on it.
Yeah.
Put some respect on it. Nobody, immigrant, migrant, refugee, I don't care what your status is. No one leaves their home country, migrate to another man's country for the betterment of that other person or that other person's country. You didn't come here to benefit me. You didn't come here to benefit Cayman. You came here because it was what was best for you. And when you do that, I think that you owe that host country a level of respect. You owe the people of that country a level of respect. I am not suggesting by any means that we are more than and they are less than.
Yeah.
But when you pick up and you come and you take, it's like someone inviting you to their home and you behave like a complete donkey.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I completely agree. And when I see people,
from my perspective,
and I completely agree with that. And when I see people acting out and saying things like that, I say to Caymanians, listen, when people show you who they are, don't question it for too long, accept it and understand what it is that we're dealing with. And so I think there has to be a certain weeding out of those types of individuals as well. And it seems to me that now that we have, as a country, attained a certain degree of success, we have more of the John-it-come-latelys who have that attitude. I mean, reflect on some people, for example, Miss, oh Lord, help me with her name now, Susie Soto, right? Like people like her and her husband who came here when Cayman didn't have a whole lot to offer, started up one of the first, if not the first hotel in East End, being killed out by mosquitoes. They went through some hard times. And I was really touched. If you go back and listen to her Cayman Voices interview, I was really touched by when she said that, listen, we came here to this country, but when we opened our business, we were looking to hire Caymanians. So this idea back then of even importing labor and importing all your friends from back home wasn't really permeating as much in the community as it does now. So I think the dynamics has changed immensely. And because the dynamics has changed, what we're now attracting to this country has also changed. But thank you so much, caller. Appreciate the comments. And I mean, it's a conversation, I think, like I said, that we could talk about from now to the end of times, and we would never be done with this conversation, because once again, we might all have a slightly different perspective. I 100% agree with that caller. It is about being respectful. But Caymanians also sometimes have very realistic expectations. Like when you guys go to sporting events and you see, for example, Jamaicans there with their Jamaican gear and Jamaican flag, and y'all are like, what are you wearing that for? You're in the Cayman Islands. I'm like, listen, you're not gonna see a Jamaican too often go somewhere else and be wearing somebody else's flag and somebody else's colors. They have a lot of national pride. Now, whether we think sometimes they go overboard with it or not, whatever, we shouldn't be questioning their level of national pride, you know. We should be questioning our own level of national pride and why all of us don't, kick it up a notch and take it to that level. But we get offended when other people demonstrate their national pride in our own country. And yet few of us are doing it. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Sandra.
Morning. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
Good.
I just wanted to offer a counterpoint, just playing devil's advocate.
Mm-hmm.
Just like how that caller who just called in and said that the people who come in here and they don't respect us and they don't respect our ways and things. That's true. There's another side to that coin where you have some Caymanians that they don't want to do anything any other way. And what ends up happening is that the culture becomes stilted, right? Now, my opinion is we do need fresh ideas. We do need fresh ways of looking at things. I mean, the Cayman of 2024 is not the Cayman of the 1950s, right? But I think there's a process, right? I mean, you can't, if there has to be first, if I'm going over to somebody's country, right? And I'm saying, oh, well, this doesn't work. Well, this is how we do it back home, and this is how we do it back home, and this is how we do it back home. I think that can be true, but I first have to show my host culture that I'm willing to assimilate into them. I'm willing to respect their ways and stuff. It's only after in my personal experience in traveling, I've only found that when you do that first, then the locals become open to fresh ideas. Doesn't mean that they abandon all of their ways or whatnot, but you have some people here who just refuse to see the world any other way.
Yeah.
It's my way, it's the way my parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents, all the way to 6, 7, 8, 9 generations.
Yeah.
And there's no change. So I mean, I agree with the caller, but I think we should also look at it from the other
and you know what, caller, some of that, I think, again, as someone who has lived abroad, I think some of that is the fact that a lot of Caymanians have never been anywhere in their lives. This is it.
Right.
Listen, not only have they never been anywhere, they've not been out of one single district. West Bayers who never passed the four-way stop. Like I had a business at the four-way stop in West Bay, and I was shocked at the number of people from West Bay who'd be like, oh, I don't ever even want to leave the district. I don't want to go in town because that's such a far journey. That's such an ordeal. And I was like, what? Do you people travel? They don't have passports. They're very close-minded. And that's why I say every opportunity you get, folks, grab that little suitcase, duffel bag, whatever, especially when you're younger. Get on a plane and see the world. I would tell you get on a boat, but then you might be trying to canoe somewhere you're not supposed to be going. But at least get on a plane and go and see the world. Expose yourself to different things, because as much as we love our country, I mean, we're not always the cat's meow. Let me be very, very clear. There are places in the world who do things better than us, who we can learn from, who we can take, so yes. But there is an annoyance, and I'll tell you where I see it a lot, that Women in Cayman group, for example. There is an annoyance when you see people who constantly are like, oh, well, my country's so perfect and we do this and we do that. And you're like, why are you here? If you come from such a perfect place, please go back home, you know? So I think it is a matter of how you do it. I completely agree with you. If these people have already assimilated into a country and they're doing it from maybe a place of like trying to improve things in Cayman, as opposed to this kind of bragging attitude that, oh, we do it better just because we're foreign and we're, you know, and they bring their divisions here along with them. But thank you so much, caller. Really appreciate those comments.
Thank you.
All right. So we got to start to wrap things up a little bit here. Remember, it's only a 2-hour show these days, and we do have a guest who's waiting. But, you know, it kind of, I was thinking about it yesterday, even in relation to my husband, but then, you know, Jamaicans are on a different flex. I'm going to be honest with you. I was thinking to myself, all right, he's been here. I mean, we've been married like coming up 10 years. I mean, he's been here on his own before that. I think maybe 13, 14 years. And I'm sure when you ask him, you know, where are you from? He's not going to say he's a Caymanian, although he has Cayman status. He's just not going to say he's a Caymanian. He's a Jamaican. And I suppose he will always and forever be a Jamaican. I don't know if I ever see a point in time where somebody would ask him, hey, where are you from? Because they're always guessing. You look Indian. Are you from Guyana? Are you straight from India, Sri Lanka? I don't ever, and he chuckles when his own Jamaicans can't figure it out. But I don't ever really see him saying, oh, yeah, I'm a Caymanian. You know, he's always going to be and forever a Jamaican. And sometimes I find it curious how people identify, like how they find their identity. And this goes back to entrenching our culture and heritage into all schools. Every single school in Cayman needs to do a better job of this, right? We shouldn't be teaching English and American history before we teach our own history. Somebody was saying that, I forget which country it is, that they don't learn anybody else's history until like secondary school, till they get into like middle or high school or whatever. They get entrenched in their own culture and their own history, so they know that first and foremost. And I agree with that approach. You know, but imagine if 30, 40 years down the line, somebody rolls up on my husband and has something to say to him about, well, you're not Caymanian, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, he knows he's a Jamaican, right? He was born in Jamaica. But if you've been here for 40, 50 years, at what point does a community begin to accept you as one of them? You know? I mean, if anybody ever walked up on my daughter and tell her that she's not a Caymanian, I'd probably have a couple choice words for you. Because, yeah, okay, now she's entitled to, you know, Jamaican citizenship if she wanted it. She could get a Jamaican passport, whatever. But she, in my eyes, is a Caymanian first and foremost. But for her dad, I'm sure in his eyes, he's like, no, my daughter's a Jamaican. So, I mean, these things get kind of complex, right? Sarah, thank you for this comment. She says, I've been here for 25 years. I'm tired of hearing that you're not a real generational Caymanian. You're a paper Caymanian. I was born in the UK, but consider Cayman my home. My kids born here, nearly been here longer than I was in the UK. And at the end of the day, we're all immigrants some way or another. Even the generational Caymanians, their ancestors came from somewhere and mixed with other nationalities. In World War II, the Nazis said Germans should identify as Aryans, a true race. We're all human beings. And so this is the potential, Sarah, of how divisive it can get, right? When we start to really try to talk about, well, how many generations Caymanian are you? It's a tough one. Good morning, Miss Lucille. How are you? It is a tough one. And I think that at the end of the day, there's something to be said for people's attitudes. And maybe that's really where the conversation goes. Queen's daughter on Instagram says, truth is, even if an expat has been here for donkey years, we fear speaking up because if we do, we go back home. We should go back home then. But I love Cayman and respect the way of life. I might not understand, but, and then unfortunately the rest of your comment got cut off. But yes, I mean, these are the realities of it. If it's any, consolation, if there's such a thing here in this conversation, Queen's daughter, even Caymanians feel that they can't speak up in their own country. And that's a whole other conversation about how we need to really move conversation forward and give people the right to speak without repercussions and fear of losing jobs and all the sorts of other stuff, right? All right, so let's pick up on this conversation again. We'll have some time, I think, probably on tomorrow's program. We want to respect that our guests are here and they want to talk about energy conservation and a few other things. What I would say is congratulations to this young lady as the first woman, no doubt, first Caribbean person, I'm sure of that, who's now the manager at the Ritz-Carlton. Well done. What I would also like to say to perhaps Mark Langevin at the Ritz-Carlton is, in this community, if you're willing to take some constructive criticism, sir, in this community, a lot of people feel that you do not have enough Caymanians on board. I know the difficulties. Listen, I'm not unrealistic here. I also know the difficulties of hiring Caymanians to work in tourism. So having said that, people still say that at that particular property, you need to do a better job. So take that on board. Take on board that they don't really see you as, being the most pro-Caymanian employer in the world, and perhaps make some improvements. Now, to their credit, let's give people credit where credit is due. To their credit, the DART organization has started, as the owner of multiple hotels on this island, they have started a hospitality training school because government couldn't successfully deliver. Y'all need to understand that we left it up to government. Y'all always talking about, we need trade schools and blah, blah, blah. We left it up to government, and clearly what the DART organization is looking for their properties, they didn't say it directly, but they've said it through their actions. Government was not delivering. So they set up their own hospitality school. And so out of that, we have seen several Caymanians get opportunities within their hotels. And in fact, just last week, I think it was, let me just do a quick search. We saw that, July 24th, we saw that the DART hospitality training program has now been extended to Cayman Brac. And so they're having some young people training there at Golden Sun property. And I think that's a positive move in the right direction. Now, they're not the only ones that need to be doing this. So if you work in tourism sector, hospitality sector, you really need to look at, there they are. Congratulations to all those young people there in Cayman Brac. You really need to look at opportunities that can be created in your organizations to take young Caymanians on board and give them a fair shot, And as the DART organization recognizes, maybe that means actually taking these young people and training them to become the ladies and gentlemen of the Ritz-Carlton, the whatever it is that we're looking at, the Kimpton, because one has to admit that the standards at a 5-star hotel are very, very different than what you're going to find perhaps at a 2 or 3-star property. All right, let's leave that conversation there, honey chair. Like I said, we will always come back to these things because conversations never end. If you want to be honest, there's always more to say on a subject. All right. We're going to talk a little bit now. We're going to switch gears, and thank you all for your comments on this. Jess says, I'm too confused. I'm not sure why you're confused, but let us now. Strong Will says, good morning, Sandy. Happy Wednesday. Thank God for DART. Well, nobody's perfect. And you give people credit where credit is due, and where constructive commentary is warranted, you also give constructive commentary. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Miss Sandy. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
How are you doing today?
Yes, good. How are you?
Okay, I'm fine. I'm looking at you in your beautiful array there this morning. You look like God. 16. Look like 16.
Thank you.
Easy there. Take it easy there. You might get people in trouble. Sandy, listen to me. Yes, I was told now my father, my grandfather is Caymanian. Okay. My mother, my grandmother's Caymanian. And I was told some time back, like probably 3 or 4 years ago,
right,
that I am not a real Caymanian.
Who told you that?
In the immigration. Someone in the immigration told me that I wasn't a real Caymanian. And when they told me that, all I could do was stand up.
What the heck?
I had to wait to swallow Because
they clearly didn't know who they were talking about. But I mean, first of all, this person must have been younger than you who said this, because Mr. Dean, you might think you're a sweet 16, but you know, you're a little bit older. So how could they tell you who and what you are? Based on what?
Sandy, don't mix me up with Mr. Dean.
Oh, this is
not Mr. Dean. So me and him are getting in trouble for the voices. You see. Anyhow, the person that told me that they was up in age, they were well seasoned, and they tell me, I'm sorry, but you're really.
But you sure your number don't show up as Mr. Dean? I could swear that the number coming up is that, but I can check it after the show.
So I said, who? So I said, well, what am I then if I'm not a real Caymanian? Who's real Caymanian?
Yeah.
And they told me to say the people that is coming here and getting citizenship, they're the real Caymanians. And I mean, I couldn't swallow.
That person talking nonsense. Okay, here's the thing, right? Sometimes we have to not entertain foolishness. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Because there are people who will say things to us.
I'm not the only one that.
Yeah, but listen to me. Just because they're saying something doesn't mean that makes any sense. If they work immigration and that's what they're telling people, they need to have some retraining because they don't have no sense. I'm sorry.
I was born underneath that tree, that same tree right where the immigration is to the left. One big old tree. I don't know what kind of tree that I can't remember. But right there, we part in the Louisa offices. Underneath that tree where we were born.
Yeah.
74 years ago. So I don't know where it was then. But if I'm not a real Caymanian, I heard Dr. Matthews says the same thing that somebody told him that too.
This is where we start to get into the ridiculousness of it all. Right? This is where like oh Lord, I don't know what to say, honey child. Some people ain't got no sense. But I wouldn't pay them too much mind because for them to say that to you. It sounds like they were it sounds like they were trying to be facetious, I guess. I don't really know. All right, Mr. George.
I know.
Thank you so much for the call. Yeah. I appreciate it. Listen. Not for nothing, and I can say this because I am a Caymanian. Some of our people don't have no sense, truth be told. And sometimes when they say certain things to me, I make it go in one ear, and quickly I flush it out the other ear. Let's move on. All right. Strong Will says everybody in immigration has a different law. I believe that, caller. They might have a different viewpoint, but they all should be operating from the exact same law. The problem is half of them don't understand the law themselves. Anywho, listen, we got CUC in the house talking about energy conservation this morning. Ms. Jiva Richards joining us. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning. I'm fine. How are you today?
I'm good. I know you must have been sitting there going, woo, honey child, what kind of conversation is this today?
No, not at all. I enjoyed the conversation.
All right. So you guys have been doing quite a bit. And one of the things you're doing is a public sort of educational campaign, on what people can do to be more energy efficient. And I can tell you from my own experiences, I suppose that there are definitely things that can be done. I mean, I've done a lot in my private home. Now I'm an owner of another property and I'm like rushing like mad because the design of that other property, oh my God, had I known what I was getting into, I think it's important for people to know that not every structural design is ideal for the Caribbean heat. Trust and believe. These are things you need to look at before you make a purchase. These so-called modern homes, the ones that we like how they look, but they have no roof that you can insulate, basically. So it's just like a concrete slab, and then that's it. Jiva, can I tell you the amount of heat that radiates through that concrete? It is insane. So
Absolutely.
we need to make better decisions when we're building homes, when we're buying homes. You need to do an energy audit before you even purchase the house to see how it is designed. You know, do you have windows that are properly sealed? There's so many different things that you need to look at. Just last week, I reached out to Rashid and his team. Big shout out to them to try to get on the same property I'm talking about. He's with Caymanian window tinting to get the windows tinted on the property because that would help with some of the direct sunlight and some of the heat that is actually coming into the property because they have specialty film. They have like security film as well as film that reduces the heat that's coming into home. So let's talk about what is the biggest contributor. And of course, I know this already, but what is the biggest contributor to energy consumption for the majority of households in the Cayman Islands and businesses as well?
Well, Sandra, first, let me just say that, I'm always happy to be here. And I think this is a topic that is so important to CUC because we not only want people to understand their bills, but we want them to understand what's contributing to their bills and how they can manage and control that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is so important to us. So again, I think, as you alluded to, I think it comes as no surprise that your air conditioning, especially in hot climates like ours, is the majority of most bills. And we're talking somewhere between 50 to 70% of your consumption is typically generated or used by your AC units or air conditioning.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And, I mean,
say that percentage again.
Between 50 and 70% is average.
Wow.
And that is especially in hot climates like ours. If we can imagine our average temperatures are in the 80s, 84, 85 degrees. And while we recommend a temperature setting of 78 degrees, oftentimes people are having their AC set at 75 or even lower. And for every degree that you drop it, you're asking your air conditioning unit to basically cool the differential between outside temperatures, which are, can be as high as 92 degrees or 90 degrees, and your indoor temperatures. And, if you're going from 90 degrees outside to 75, that's 15 degrees. But if you're at 70, that's, it's 30 degrees, 20 degrees differences. So it's significant.
Yeah. I mean, I see people coming here, some of our visitors, and because they're not used to the heat, and I think there is something to be said when you become acclimated to temperatures, right? And so they're not used to it. They come from cooler temperatures and climates. And so the first thing they do when they walk into like a hotel or rental property is they want to drop the air conditioning down to like 60 degrees.
Yes.
And AC technicians, I think even Sasha was on the show here saying to us that doesn't make any sense because all you're doing is forcing your AC unit to work that much harder and it's not going to get there any faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, as it relates to air conditioning, as I said, it is perhaps the largest contributor to definitely the largest contributor to your bill. And, we recommend temperatures, again, indoor 78 degrees, when it's occupied. When you're not there, oftentimes people leave their air conditioning on or they leave it at the same temperatures. So we recommend that if it's not something that requires AC, turn it off. Because while you're away from home, it is still running, it's still working to keep it at the temperatures that you have it set. And already with the heat, it's working hard. And if it's unoccupied, it's really wasted energy if there's no need for it.
Now, one of the things that I'm actually dealing with, it's so funny because right now, big shout out to Polar Bear Air Conditioning. So I've been working with their team and they are helping me with just trying to do some servicing and figuring out a few things with some units to kind of have them working optimally so that the place is cooling properly and so on, right? So one of the recommendations they've actually made in relation to this specific property is because of concerns with humidity and potential growth in the ducting and stuff like that, is that I have to keep the air conditioning on all the time. I'm like, what? I mean, I try to be fair to the AC, but I don't operate on a budget that allows me to keep an AC on all the time. So how do you, in a situation like that, where you have the technician saying, you know, to keep the humidity where it should be, keep your air conditioning on at like 82, 83 degrees. How do you kind of make that work?
Well, that is a difficult situation in many regards. You have like yourself in terms of humidity. You have some people that have specialty flooring that have to be kept at specific temperatures. What I recommend and what we recommend is that you do what you're doing, looking at options for insulation, things that would help to when it's on, keep it cooler so it's not running as frequently. Insulation plays a huge role. Your tinting of your windows, shading of the house, like trees and stuff like that, which unfortunately I think we've gone away from in many cases. And unfortunately, those are situations. But the cooler it is, or the more it can maintain a temperature inside, and insulation plays a huge role in that. The shorter periods that it will run to keep bringing the temperature down to what you have it set at. And servicing your ACs regularly, again, making sure that they're not working hard. When you're, like in your case, you had polar bear come out, I'm sure they would have checked the ducting to make sure that they're working optimally, and it's not working hard to push that air through to the rooms that it needs to get through. But if there's any ability or room for you to increase the temperature to reduce the differential between inside and outside, that would also help.
Very interesting. We have a question from a listener says, but Sandra, I was told it's more efficient to leave your AC on as it doesn't have to work hard to cool down an already hot room. Now, I know we've answered this question. I'm surprised this caller is actually asking this question, because I know for a fact we have answered it multiple times that CUC has been on the program. And you guys have said that is absolutely not the case at all. That you cannot, there's no way that you can compare turning off an air conditioning versus running it all the time at any temperature. So knowing how hot the interior gets, and I think a lot of people, honestly, I don't know what kind of thermostats y'all have. I have smart thermostats, so I can see the temperature. Like when I walk into a unit, it says 96 degrees. I know that's 96 degrees, and the feel like might be, if it's 96, 100 or even more than 100, right? So I think a lot of people need to start using some of these tools. And I know you have one here that you're going to tell us about in a little bit, to help them manage understanding what's happening, especially with AC units. But having said that, there's no way that you could have an AC unit set to any temperature that would be more energy efficient than just turning it off. Am I correct?
Absolutely. I mean, it's once an air conditioning unit is running and there is any difference of temperatures between what it's set at and outside, your air conditioning unit will be running, will be generating or consuming electricity to cool it down to the temperature that it's set at. And again, if you leave it, if you're not there, you're cooling empty space, right? So it is absolutely not more efficient to leave it on. There are times that, like, if you're away and you increase your AC temperature, some people prefer to do that, but understanding that you're still using electricity, albeit it might be a bit less if it is higher, your AC is set higher, but you absolutely are using more electricity leaving it on versus turning it off.
Yeah.
Because if you consider, if your air conditioning is on and you have it set at the recommended 78 degrees and it's 90 or 92 degrees outside, inside, you're saying that it's 90. If it's running, it's coming on at least half an hour of every hour to cool or keep your inside temperature at the temperature you have it set at, versus getting home and turning it on and it may run for 45 minutes or an hour to cool the house down. That's certainly less electricity than it running all day long and coming on 6 hours or 5 hours throughout the day to keep it at the temperature when no one's there.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, if you kind of, I've been trying to be more cognizant about my energy usage and sort of paying attention to these elements, but you can definitely see it. In the evening hours, for example, it takes a lot less time to cool your home. Now, in our house, we have multiple units controlling different areas. So if we're just in the living room, we turn on that particular one and we don't turn on the others because we're cooling rooms that nobody's in, right? And so, I can, if I set it at 77, I can feel it within maybe a good hour. It's like, okay, it's at 77. It feels good. And then I actually just turn it back off. So I'm like, okay, it's cool. It's where it needs to be. Because I know I'm not going to be in that room all night. We're just going to be there for a couple hours, in the common area. And then we're going to go to the bedroom. So as we get closer to going to bed, I'll turn that on because the bedroom AC is only controlling 1 or 2 rooms. It doesn't take as long to cool that space either.
Absolutely. That is one of our recommendations. To your point, many people have split units or multiple units in a home. And sometimes they have them all running where, you're not in a particular area. And again, you're running an air conditioning, cooling an area that you may walk into, for 5 or 10 minutes and leave. And, it's consuming electricity. So again, if you're not using that particular room or section of your home, you're absolutely on the right track. Turn it off. Because it's consuming electricity and during that period of time. So it is more efficient to do exactly what you're doing. Turn it off if it's not occupied and being used. And one of the other things is back to, the temperature and the differences is that, we often find that you started off with this, which is so true. Oftentimes people, it's hot and because it's hotter outside, your air conditioning is already working harder than it perhaps would have worked in January or February when it was cooler because outside temperatures, humidity was, a bit less. So once you move into the summer and it's getting hotter already, even without changing the thermostat, without changing the temperature that you had it on in January, February, your AC unit is working harder because now it's working harder to cool the house to the temperature that is higher based on the outside temperature, right? So then people compound that sometimes by then turning the air conditioning down to say, hey, it's hotter outside. I need this cooler. And again, that's only increasing the differential between outside temperature and what you're asking your AC or how hard you're asking your AC to run.
All right. Very, very interesting. Okay. So Ms. Sue had the same question as that other person. So hopefully, Ms. Sue, that adds some degree of clarification to it. I saw that Flashpoint says that he now, move over to an inverter AC system because Flashpoint, where did I see that comment? Flashpoint. I saw you said something about, oh yes, I run my AC 24/7 and reduced my power consumption by 37% by switching over to inverter units. Well, I don't know anything about that, but what are inverter units?
So inverter units, that's perhaps more using systems within like cooling. I know some hotels locally, for instance, what they do is they have like cooler rooms where they generate like ice, and then they take that overnight, and then they run that during the day from the ice or cooler that they've basically generated from, and that essentially is using the cooling that they've done or created throughout the night, which reduces the consumption on the AC during the day. So that could be some of that. Our if anybody has questions on these particular units or needs to have more information, we have in-house our metering supervisor and our energy efficiency team that is more than happy to answer some of these questions, give additional tips on what might be better options for customers as well.
So I'm just reading here quickly. It says main difference between an inverter and a non-inverter AC lies in the compressor speed. An inverter AC has a variable speed compressor, while a non-inverter AC has a fixed speed compressor. Variable speed compressors are more energy efficient than fixed counterparts and make less noise as well. So basically, the inverter AC can adjust the compressor's motor speed to regulate the temperature.
Yeah. And again, but those are, those are investments that, our customers can make. But for the most part, those are great options. But most people aren't changing out air conditioning units or compressors on a regular, because they do cost money, and it's substantial cost, right?
Yeah.
So, if somebody has the money to invest in better air conditioning units, inverters, things that would, be long-term investments that would bring it down, definitely those are the way to go. But for those persons that have existing units that want to understand how to reduce their consumption without investing huge amounts, these are some of the tips that we normally would recommend.
But I mean, it's good. And thank you, Flashpoint, for mentioning it, because I don't even know anything about these. So now I'll speak to my technicians and do a little bit of homework. But obviously, if you're not looking to replace your units right now, but that's something you can plan ahead, because I bet you they're probably more expensive if they're more energy efficient as well, right? But that's something that you can budget and plan ahead for. So I think this is why, a lot of people are building homes. They don't know anything about this type of stuff. It's good to educate yourself and to talk to the experts who can, sort of advise you on what your options are and how long-term it's going to be a better option for you. Nobody wants to spend more money. Let me be very, very clear. Everybody is tight with the budget, especially on something that they don't really want to spend money on to begin with. So nobody wants to spend more money on CUC. Nobody wants to spend, but listen, if I'm into going out and having a good time, drinking dinner, then I'll spend all sorts of money on that sort of stuff, right? So it's all about priorities. But I think that when you're building a house, a lot of people are prioritizing the wrong things. So we're looking at aesthetics when we should be thinking practical things, like insulation, making sure those windows are double pane, properly insulated. That'll cost you more money. Without a doubt, you're going to spend more money on those things. But in the long run, it's going to be saving you for the life of that home. Good morning, caller.
Morning.
Morning.
I see comment that your guest made about forgetting about trees and awnings and those types of things. That is a very, very important point. Because the idea of having a tree, for example, interrupting the sunlight striking a window, or having an awning preventing sun from striking the window for most of the day is a very good investment, because it's a one-time expense. And if you don't have those things, then it's a recurring expense, because you have to pay for it in the form of running your air conditioner. And the reason for that is that if you block the sun from hitting the window from the outside, then you're not allowing the sun to heat up the air on the inside. And if you heat up the air on the inside, then the air conditioner is going to have to cool it down. And a few minutes later, the sun is going to heat it up again. Your air conditioner is going to cool it down. And that's why what she was talking about when she talked about an awning or a tree blocking the sun is so important. That one statement right there would save you a ton of money. But I have another recommendation. If you have an older structure that perhaps doesn't have insulated foam on it, and you're not able to do that for whatever reason it be, there's a product called Cool Coating that you can get from, I think it's Sherwin-Williams.
Yes, this is basically like a paint, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that on my roof a couple years ago. Yes. And I think I'm going to have to do it on this other roof that I'm talking about as well, to try to get things under control.
And those things are one-time expenses too.
Yeah.
I mean, they cost a bit of money, but
yeah,
you do it one time, and then you're basically living in in a structure that prevents the heat from getting in the first place, and that's ideally what you want it to be.
Exactly.
But how do new homeowners get to that position? You need a good architect that's conscious of these things and has the courage to point out to you that you might want to really seriously consider these points as part of designing your new home, because it will have a tremendous impact in your life.
Thank you, Denny, for that recommendation. Good idea. Appreciate it so much. Yes, there is actual, and I didn't know about it. And again, somebody said to me, "Oh boy, Sandy, that's quite a roof you got there, and it's high, and I can see the heat that would be drawing in. Have you ever thought about the same coating thing? It's basically like they paint the roof, shingles." And I said, "Oh gosh, I've never even heard of it." And I looked into it and actually had it done. And hopefully it's helped, I guess. But supposedly it can reduce the temperature of your roof by multiple degrees. So every little thing helps. I mean, Flashpoint is saying, get gas and propane appliances, all these little things. You got to try to help yourself as much as you can. And there's a lot that can be done, from lighting to insulation to, your biggest cost, that AC unit, of course, large appliances at Jiva, like the refrigerators, draw a lot as well.
They do, and I think in Cayman, it's kind of almost a given that a lot of homes have multiple refrigerators. Some people have refrigerators in garages. Garages are often very hot, not air conditioning already, and you have a cooling element like a refrigerator. I mean, I'm guilty in my home. I have a refrigerator and 3 freezers, right? Because my husband likes to fish. But my point is, there's a lot of homes that have that, and you don't necessarily think about it, but they are, again, cooling appliances that are consuming electricity, right? And significant amount.
And they have to run 24/7.
Absolutely, they're running. They're not going off. Wine coolers, those kind of things. So again, we just want to remind people that it is summer. We know that already temperatures, the difference in temperatures is going to cause your consumption, perhaps your AC units to run harder and more consumption. And just be mindful that these are some tips, things like turning on fans, using fans, cooling the room, turning on fans, moving the air, perhaps smart thermostats, programming them to set temperatures so they're not being, lowered too much. Things like that could definitely help you with reducing your consumption. And I guess as we go in, we also want to remind people that, they can check, their usage and consumption on our ICUC platform, that gives them the opportunity.
Can we, I know we're running a little bit short on time this morning, but can we have a look at the next time you come on? Perhaps we can do it the week of August the 12th at Jiva if you have time, but can we look at how to utilize that monitoring feature that CUC has, and also talk a little bit then about the prepaid option. So if we can leave those two till the next segment. But I must say that smart thermostats, once I discover them, really can make a huge difference, because sometimes you leave home and you forget to turn off the AC. Then you can just go on your phone. You can adjust it on your phone. I think it's so good to see how things are cooling, like certain times of day. You can just glance at your phone and see if it's reached the necessary temperature. And split units, although aesthetically sometimes they're not always the best, I could see where they make complete sense. Like, I have a bit of a conundrum, and I am mulling it over in my head, cost savings and getting a split unit, which I kind of, like I said, aesthetically don't want to do. But at night, on one side of our house, there's an AC condenser unit that is essentially cooling 4 rooms, and there's only a person in one of the 4 rooms. So it's kind of like, I know that's a complete waste of energy. So, I think sometimes we have to make some tough decisions, right? But depending on the usage of your property and how you're using different rooms and whatever, it kind of might make sense to go to split AC unit. I hadn't thought about fans as much, because again, for me, a fan is kind of like, the ceiling fans are just aesthetics, look good, whatever. And one day Sasha came on and he talked about how you could reduce the temperature of a room by several degrees by simply turning on a fan. And I was like, what? Several degrees?
Absolutely. because I mean, when it's already cool from your AC, if it's off, the fan's circulating the air, and so it's kind of working in that way, and it's using far less electricity than AC would. Right?
Well, I started using a fan at least in one room now, so I thank him for that suggestion. I got a lot of the standing fans, and here's a tip to everybody listening: they have the standing fans that are now they come built in with smart features, so you can download the app. Y'all know I love me and Amazon. I love smart things. You can not just smart people, but smart things as well. You can download the app and actually control those fans remotely. So you can put them on timers. If somebody forgot to turn off a fan, you can, remotely right from the phone app, turn it off and on. So I'm actually going to, let me see if I can tell you guys just as a quick, go look it up on Amazon type thing. The brand is called Dreo, D-R-E-O. I think that's how it's pronounced. And it comes with, remote control and everything, as well as the smart app. So like at night, in Gianna's room, I'll set it to be on for, depending on what time she goes to bed, anywhere from like 8 to 10 hours, and it'll automatically then turn itself off. Again, if you forget to turn it off, you can, let me just show you these real quick. Go and have a look. You can actually control it right from your smart device, from your smartphone. And they're quiet, and they've got different features, like a night feature, so the little light turns off and all sorts of stuff. So check those out, folks. These are, bits and pieces of information. We have to help each other. If I discover something that saves me money, is energy efficient, I can certainly recommend it. Big shout out to Flashpoint for making recommendations and stuff as well. Thank you, Jiva, for coming on the program. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Just before I leave, I just want to, share with the public that, CUC will be doing offering giveaways via our social media, a social media campaign. We're going to be beginning this on August 12th. And this is, again, geared specifically focused on energy efficiency knowledge, right? Again, we're very keen on ensuring that customers understand their consumption and, how they can conserve energy. So again, look out for that. That's coming up beginning August 12th, and there will be giveaways associated with that campaign.
Okay, sounds good. We'll keep an eye out for it and cross-share it on the CMR platform as well. Really appreciate you guys as always. So we'll see you hopefully in a couple of weeks, and we can talk more about those other two things. Definitely prepay and how to monitor, because CUC gives you the tools to monitor your usage by the day as well.
All right. Thank you for having me, Sandra.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chief. Really appreciate it. All right. So we'll pick up the conversation at Patriana. Don't worry. Solar AC. You've got all sorts of things now that are available on solar. And I mean, you can just do, solar panels that does everything in the home as well. So listen, everything that you can do to be more energy efficient, definitely go about it for sure. All right. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. I know we're switching gears a lot this morning. I feel like I'm driving a stick shift. Now we're in third gear. Going to go up to fourth gear here in a second. A lot of you thinking, does Sandy really know how to drive a stick shift? Yes, I do. I learned many moons ago, honey child, back in the day. All right. So listen, we're going to switch it up now. We've got Mr. Wayne Panton, who's been patiently waiting. He was, like I said, initially going to come on yesterday, but he's busy with his constituents, making sure that they're taken care of first and foremost. And Mr. Panton, good morning. So nice to have you on the program.
Good morning, Sandra, and good morning to the Cayman Islands.
Yes.
Good morning to all of your viewers. It's a pleasure to join you as always.
Yeah, good to see you.
To talk and interact.
Yeah, I think, have we seen you since you had your COVID experience? I'm trying to remember.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so we're glad to hear that you're feeling better.
Yep.
And you have been
avoid
busy.
COVID if you can, because
oh my gosh, yeah, still kind of bad. We know that you've been very, very busy opening parks. Now, there's some people who are like, didn't these community have parks before? What is Mr. Panton doing? Why are you opening parks? So just tell us a little 5 minutes worth here of what you've been up to in relation to these parks. I know it's been a long haul project. It didn't happen overnight, but exactly what are you doing? 5 parks in total. What's that all about?
So yes, there were certain community parks that had been done like 12, 14, 15 years ago, that were, for one reason or another, were not maintained. Equipment that had been put in there basically deteriorated. And, I think probably in the last 5 to 7 years, much of that has deteriorated to the point that it had to be taken down because it was dangerous for our children to be playing on it. Some of it was actually collapsing. Some of it had deteriorated to the point where children were getting splinters, for example, being on those, trying to utilize that equipment. So it was taken down. The parks have been maintained, notwithstanding that. And then we undertook a massive project of reinstating much of the and adding to really the parks that had these facilities originally. There's one park in Savannah which was not a government operated facility. It's owned by the Bodden family, by MP Heather Bodden's family. So we added facilities there. We added beautiful playground facilities with swings and everything, pretty much similar, or if not identical, to what was implemented in other parks in Newlands. So in addition to the parks that we have been maintaining, and we've upgraded now with a whole set of playground equipment that our children absolutely love, that represents the opportunity for safe activity, and for children to really grow in resilience and having fun, and providing another option for their parents. We've not only have we sort of reinstated and upgraded the existing parks, there was really 3 of those. We've now created in Newlands a 4th one, which is the waterfront park by the launch ramp, which was called a Newlands launch ramp, or Newlands Barcadair. It's right at the end of Leeward Drive in North Sound Estates. I'm sure many people are familiar with it. And Sandra, many parents, many residents in the community of North Sound Estates and in the wider community of Newlands will go down there, and they will walk up and down, because Leeward is such a fairly lengthy straight road, and it's got lots of speed tables on it, so it's relatively safe to be walking on. And many of them walk with their families, walk with their children, and they get down to the waterfront park, and then they have a facility there that they can spend quality time there with their children. The children can play on these safe, beautiful playground sets, and the swings and all the other stuff, and the slides and the climbing structures, and very safe things that allow them to really enjoy themselves. And I would tell you that I think Newlands has more parks now than per capita than any other constituency in Grand Cayman, and I think that's obviously very fitting, in the sense that Newlands is by and large a residential constituency. So having these facilities in place, which are generally within walking distance, just a few minutes walking distance for most families, is wonderful to be able to do that. Yes, they represent a very significant investment, but I think they're essential for maintaining, improving the quality of life of our residents, and providing wonderful options to our children, who can get out there outside, play and enjoy themselves, and not be limited to sitting at home playing on iPads and this sort of thing. So much more constructive, I think. Lots of physical activity, and it's really something that I think represents an opportunity to improve their mental health. You know, some of our children have issues at times with you know, with anxiety, for example, and the physical activity and the being outside and interacting with their friends in a very, very pleasant social setting and a fun social setting is a great way for them to, you know, to build family time, quality family time, and enjoy themselves and get a lot of positive benefits from it at the same time.
Very good. And I tell you what, the children certainly seem to enjoy themselves. I've now been to 2. And even Gianna was going around telling people about these parks that are opening. And, you know, she's like, yeah, we've been to 2 and they're going to do 5. And it's so nice and, you know, lots of fun. And, you know, the kids just really have a fantastic and great time. And it's a way to get them outdoors in a safe environment where you can keep an eye on them. And, you know, they're able to enjoy the slides and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So really appreciate it. Thank you very much for doing that. And I mean, you're doing this out of your own pocket. I should say that's very, very commendable.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think it represents a commitment by Ms. Heather and myself to ensure that, you know, the needs of families are met, and to build resiliency, and to really help develop, you know, our communities in along the lines of our motto, which is, you know, community creates country. So I think that's a very important thing, to build a resilience and to add these features and options into our community, so people don't have to go very far to enjoy them.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that there were so many available spaces in the Newland Savannah area until you started doing them. And then I was like, oh, right, there is a park there, and then down by the dock. And so it's good to see how you don't even necessarily need a whole lot of room, but you can take a little space and really make it something enjoyable for families and kids.
Well, interestingly, there are probably 3 or 4 other spaces that are designated as land for public purposes that could be turned into parks, but I don't think every LPP space needs to have like a playground facility. So, you know, one of the things that we'll be moving on to is working on some of these LPP spaces to beautify them, to, you know, create grassed areas, create areas, you know, like beautiful cabanas where people can just enjoy nature without necessarily having playground facilities there, because I think you know, we have quite a number of these facilities that serve our community now. So
yeah,
we can have a combination of approaches with the LPP spaces.
Right. I know you were doing some sort of community gardening project one time as well. I don't know if that's still ongoing, but have you thought about maybe some of the other spaces, making those like community gardening spots? Like maybe you can do grow boxes and
yeah. No, we've had a number of proposals from residents along those lines. You know, they'd like to be able to do some, you know, sort of backyard type farming or growing, not on a big scale, but, you know, little, as you say, like grow boxes and this type of stuff. Nothing wrong with that at all. And I think that's another constructive approach that we can be implementing in some of these other LPP areas that are not necessarily conducive to, you know, being playgrounds.
All right. Negra Pula says opening parks is wonderful. Kids have the option to go out and be in the sun and socialize more. Strong Wilt says, Sandy, God bless Miss Heather and Mr. Panton and their families. Good job. Aliano's asking a question. I don't know what this is about, but whether or not, what is the situation with the land over by Lobster Pot next to Coral Sands Hotel? Is it private owned or government owned? I have no idea if you would know.
I'm not quite sure what land he might be, Aliano might be referring to there, but if it is, there was a piece of land that was purchased by government in the context of a proposed facility, which would be both an added attraction and a government sort of training facility. This was proposed by the Ministry of Tourism. So I think maybe that's the piece of land he's referring to, in which case that is definitely owned by government. I think there was an attempt to either purchase or lease an adjacent piece of land as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it is, as far as I'm aware, it's registered in the name of government. The Crown.
Right. All right. So one of the things that we want to sort of, as Caymanians would say, pick your mouth about this morning is this ReGEN project. So we saw the government, you guys were just in the Legislative Assembly, and to be clear, you're not part of cabinet any longer. So when I use the term government, I'm obviously talking about the cabinet members, and obviously they're pushing their papers and their agendas and whatever. We saw Minister Catherine Wilkes indicate that this government has decided to basically terminate the ReGEN project. I thought it was interesting that although they said that they're canceling it, they're terminating it, they actually hadn't given that notice, even courtesy or legally, to the other party as yet, the DECO, which is a DART consortium. But if they are doing this, and we take them, at face value in terms of what they have said, what were your thoughts when you heard them say that after 7 years of back and forth and negotiations? And I know that at one point when the PAT government, which you were the premier and leader of, was in, you actually took control of the situation after there was no movement on it for a year and started to get things going. So tell us what your thoughts were. What were you achieving during your time? And were you hopeful that it would eventually get done? Because we're 25 years now, and based on my estimations, of talking about some sort of waste energy facility, and it just hasn't happened.
Yeah. I mean, I asked the question in Parliament, a private member's question, because we were hearing nothing official from the government. But it seemed that, by all indications, that that things were slowing down and nothing was really happening on it. And that seemed to be the case from almost immediately after I left government. So you're right. It represents probably 7 or 8 years of hard work and effort that seems to have been put aside now. I'm not going to criticize the minister on it because it's unlikely that she would come in at that time and basically make a decision herself that this project was not going to be something that would move forward. As I said during my sort of attempt to elicit additional information after the statement was made in Parliament in relation to ReGEN, it really boils down to a question of priorities. And clearly, this government, the leadership of this government, has decided that there are certain other priorities they'd like to implement, including a new, quite expensive school in the Brac, and a number of other things that they were borrowing an additional $150 million for. So that, I think, is a reflection of a different approach in terms of priorities on matters that need to be addressed. But it is a bit perplexing that there seems to be a suggestion. Well, I shouldn't say seem to be. There was a very clear indication that there's a plan to sort of retender the waste energy facility. No details provided on it. But one of my follow-up questions was really, what gives the government any confidence that retendering this facility is somehow going to make it any less expensive, because their explanation was that they regarded it as unaffordable. And yes, costs have increased in relation to it. You know, it should be no surprise to anyone that costs have increased. We've had, 2 years of significant inflation on a whole range of cost of living items that relate directly to our quality of life and our ability to sustain ourselves and and feed our families. So and clothe and shelter them. So there's no surprise that costs have increased. That ever since Russia invaded the Ukraine back in February of 21, or it was February 22. We've had this challenge. So there's nothing new there. Costs have increased. It's a very narrow sort of specialized area. I think there's only two main players that are involved in waste energy facilities, and at least of this scale. And I think one is Japanese and one is, I think, was Danish or is Danish. And I believe the Japanese group had indicated they were not interested in this particular one. So quite how this is somehow going to be redone is a bit of a mystery. And I don't get the impression that a lot of thought has gone into it, and I don't get the impression that that they have any clear ideas. I think there's just been a reaction that they've got a different set of priorities. Now, how we as a country are going to avoid a landfill crisis, I don't know. In this current scenario that they have just created by withdrawing. I'm not surprised, but you indicate that the other party, the DART consortium, were unaware officially of this decision. I'm not surprised if that's the case, because it doesn't seem to me like a lot of integrity was built into this discussion and this decision. So not surprised there, but I don't know how they're going to avoid a crisis now, because while they may be indicating that there's 5 to 6 years of landfill space remaining, everything that I am aware of indicates that it is less than that. And my own view is it is less than that. Yes, I took the project over after, I think it was maybe 6 months. Because when I was following up with the health ministry at the time, to find out where they were getting to and how things were going, it became clear that somewhere along the line, somebody had communicated to the health ministry that we shouldn't be budgeting for this project. So I don't know what the issue. I don't know where that came from. It certainly wasn't anything that was a discussion amongst the cabinet. Of course, in the first year, we were still operating on the original budget that had been in place by the previous government. That continued until December of 21, the end of December of 21. But certainly, a suggestion that we weren't going to be budgeting for this project going forward in 22 and 23 created some concern. So to avoid any other issues occurring with it, I took the project over to ensure that it remained a priority, because it is absolutely essential for the country to have a sustainable way of managing our solid waste, our trash. And I think it is, personally, I think, as I've said, I think there's going to be an unavoidable landfill crisis now, because we don't have the time, and we don't have the time to build an alternative. Even doing a separate landfill will take years to prepare, and is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, one of the things I did was I did a lot of work around options in 21 to ascertain what the cost would be to finish this project versus doing an alternative versus doing nothing. Of course, the do nothing option would never be acceptable. But we looked at the cost of putting in place proper landfill lined and proper and fully developed landfill facilities, and that was going to be hundreds of millions, and it was going to be several years in order to put that in place. So really, given what had been invested, given the time and energy, and the short time span that we had left as a result of the decisions to cap and remediate the existing landfill, that has narrowed our leverage, that has narrowed our window of opportunity, and making the decision at this point to not move forward really creates, I think, the foundation for a crisis. We have unbridled population growth occurring. It isn't necessarily new. This is something that's been going on for 15, 20 years. We've probably been averaging population growth over that period of around 4%. I think we need to be much more strategic in relation to our growth, and try to manage it. Because if we don't do that, these problems that we have been having, whether it's solid waste management, whether it's traffic, whether it's other issues in relation to infrastructure, the impacts on our quality of life, the changes that are occurring, these are all things that we are not going to have solutions for if we just continue doing what we've been doing. The impacts are just going to grow. They're going to exacerbate the stress and the concern about quality of life degradation that we are all feeling. And of course, it also unplanned, unbridled growth impacts so many other areas, as I've talked about on your show a number of times, including your ability to live in your neighborhoods and have good quality enjoyment of your homes, avoiding stormwater issues, flooding on your property, all these types of things. We have to have a proper national growth strategy, which and our growth management plan, which incorporates initiatives and a strategy to control population growth. We cannot just continue growing for the sake of growing. We have got to, I think, be very clear that this has to be growth that is right for our people, that has links directly to improvements in opportunity, improvements in the quality of life, and addressing our particular issues in terms of infrastructure. So that we feel that as a country, we feel that the growth that occurs is growth which adds to our quality of life and adds to our view that we have a successful country, rather than feeling like as Caymanians that we are now a growing. Well, I shouldn't say growing. The concern is growing, but we're becoming more and more of a minority in our country, and these issues that we have are just getting worse and worse. So for our own sort of physical and social and economic well-being, I think we need to carefully manage and have proper planning in place so that we properly manage, strategically manage our growth.
Yes. Can I just jump in and say,
too many politicians of the past and too many, I think, currently have a view that, you know, this is all irrelevant. Let's just press the accelerator to the floor and keep going, you know, and the quality of our comfort and comfort of our people be damned. It's very frustrating, but.
Yeah. Can I just say that, you know, when I was thinking about this, and, you know, I would have said this in my discussions as well, that this doesn't give, and I have to wonder how many of our MPs have ever worked in private sector, right? They've worked for companies and businesses that might have had government contracts or government negotiations, because there is a broader fundamental issue here where you have government decisions like this, where you decide to cancel a contract, you don't even communicate it properly to the other party. After 7 years of people investing, you know, they did an EIA, they, you know, had legal teams working through documentation, they brought experts of all sorts on board, right? You put people through, because this is no little itty bitty project, to be clear. Projects like this are considered quite massive, right? Of an undertaking. This, in my mind, undermines government's ability to be taken seriously when it comes to these private public partnership agreements or contracts that you see government is always talking about. They value so much and that's so incredibly important. They've just demonstrated that it can't be that important. If you could take a decision, what seems to have been taken rather lightly, you're not even engaging the parties. You didn't even invite them to the table to say, hey, let's have a conversation. Maybe, you know, as a new government, whatever, because a lot of them are there during the initial signing of this. You know, we have some concerns. You know, we're prioritizing things differently. We have a different budget. We want to spend $50 million plus on a school in the BRAC instead. You know, how can you work with us? If none of those conversations took place, what do you think? I know you've worked in, you know, one of the island's largest law firms. What do you think private sector, like businesses, are thinking when they see government making these types of movements? And we have to think about this. I mean, people might say, oh, well, the hell with private sector, but this country wouldn't be what it is without private sector organizations and injection of, you know, capital and working with government. Sometimes private sector organizations, including the DART organization, literally donates millions of dollars to government, to security, to police, to border control, and all these other things. If they start to feel that, you know, government doesn't respect them and doesn't appreciate them, and maybe they start to retract and put, you know, pull back on some of their generosities as corporate citizens, it just seems like it's a hot mess.
No, I agree. I mean, it is going to create, I think, reputational damage for the country, for the government, and it is going to make it harder, perhaps much harder, to sort of restart this kind of proposal again. It's a mystery to me how they think they're going to, you know, change, stop this and then get onto a different track and reach a successful conclusion. You know, it's just going to be very difficult. As I indicated earlier, as I understand it, there are two main players in this particular space for this type of facility. And one of them indicated they weren't interested in the original proposal. And now we've basically wasted the time of the others that have, or the other one that has been involved in this discussion. So, you know, where is the credibility going forward? And as I said in Parliament, what gives the government any kind of confidence that retendering this project is going to make it cheaper and more affordable, improve its affordability. Look, managing our waste, our solid waste, any kind of waste is very expensive. You know, a sewage system, for example, is very expensive. And it's a long-term project. It's a long-term proposal to have something in place, not just for 5 or 10 years, but it's, you know, 25, 30, 40, 50 years in some cases. We have, you know, we have other islands. Bermuda had a waste energy facility in place from I think about 25 or 26 years ago. And now I think that the last conversation I had with my friend, the deputy premier in Bermuda, Mr. Walter Roban, I think he was indicating to me that they were beginning the process of, you know,
looking to upgrade
the tendering process for a replacement of their existing facility.
Wow.
And you know, here we are, we can't get a facility in place. Now, I think that I don't agree that the actions of the previous government in terms of the progressives were entirely wrong in their approach, but I do think that they, in their rush to deal with issues like fires at the landfill and that type of thing, you know, they initiated this land transfer agreement in October of 2020, which was the beginning of the remediation of the landfill. You know, and I think part of their desire was to try to minimize the situation we had, particularly with that large fire. But what that did was it reduced our options. It narrowed the time frame because they agreed to remediate the majority of the landfill, limit the areas that could be utilized for further landfill, you know, with the intention that the waste energy facility would ultimately be in place. But now we've done all that. We've remediated the landfill. We've eliminated our option to continue doing that, or severely narrowed our option to continue doing that. And now we've abandoned moving forward with the waste energy facility with these parties that had all the interest in doing it, and had invested a lot of time and energy and good faith effort. So where does that leave us, and how do we move forward now? I just don't know at this point. I think it is going to be regarded as a bad decision in the light of day in history, and I don't know where, you know, how we're going to move forward. We had issues in the past when we were trying to talk about a new landfill, you know, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And the view of people across this country was, we don't want a new landfill in our communities. So we're going to reactivate all of those views, you know, where people feel strongly that they don't want something like that in their backyard or near their backyard. You know, our option to do something constructive that represented progress, that represented the ability to have a sustainable facility in place to manage the byproduct of a lot of our population growth and everything else, you know, we've now just tossed that out the window. So where we go forward from here is going to be a difficult question. And I don't think there are any easy answers at all. And I certainly don't think there are any cheaper answers to doing it.
Right. Wow. Okay, we got about 5 minutes left in the program. I do have a hard stop at 9:30 today. I've got some things that I need to get to for 10 o'clock. 936-2626 if you have a question or comment for Mr. Panton. Carol, good morning to Ms. Carol. She says, Wayne makes so much sense. Damien says, reckless politics. Denver says, by the time our government gets the ReGEN project rolling again, it will cost 3 times as much.
That's if they can.
That's if they can. I mean, there's a real
No,
possibility.
I agree with him. I agree with him.
Yeah. And the crazy thing too is somebody was saying to me, Sandy, you know, again, they have to consider that the DECO group and the consortium, the DART consortium, if they have to go through this all again, they may just say, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to waste our time for another 7+ years. So who do they think is going to be jumping at this? Like, I don't see a whole lot of people who can do this the correct way, jumping at this opportunity. This isn't just a fly by night, oh, throw a couple of cans in this box and then we'll figure out a way how to recycle it or ship it on a barge over to Cuba. Like, if you have organizations who can pool together the expertise to be able to do a proper waste management facility, a lot of people may not be interested in helping Cayman get this done.
That's absolutely fair point. No question about that. So I don't know, you know, as I've said, I don't know where we go, but you know, there seems to be this focus on other things, which really are designed to promote further growth. Is further growth going to somehow change our consumption pattern and reduce the amount of solid waste that we generate? I doubt that very much. It will only accelerate it. So, I mean, you know, we've heard recently in Parliament that we don't have enough hospital beds on a per capita basis. You know we don't have enough public school spaces in Grand Cayman, but yet there's a proposal to build, you know, a $50 million school for 150 children in the BRAC. Now, there's nothing wrong with making sure that the children in the BRAC have a good high school facility, but I'm not sure that everybody agrees that, you know, a $50 million facility is necessarily the way to go. There was when that was first proposed, it was something like $27 million. And then in the space of a few months, it suddenly morphed into something which was closer to $50 million. And I never could get a straight answer as to how that happened, you know, what the cost drivers were in relation to that. But we've been struggling. We've been, you know, having to make changes to John Gray, for example, which was a school that was just finished.
Yep.
You know,
and it's already
long in building. But we just finished that school in was it 22, end of 22? I can't remember exactly when it was. You know, we've now had to within a year we've had to make changes to the school to try to accommodate another 50 children, another 100 children, and the school is just ram-packed. You know, we have children that can't get in there.
Yeah.
So
it's over capacity, and we talk about how that creates a trickle-down problem. Just this last school year, we had teachers who were recruited regionally to come here, told that their children would have space in government schools because that was the only way that they could really have it make financial sense. And then they got here and had to turn around and go back and cancel their teaching contracts with government because there was no space for them in these government schools.
Yeah.
So
so now we have, you know, we have that continuing. We have clearly some other priorities going on. We now have, you know, discussions suddenly popping out of nowhere that we've got to do something about the cargo port expansion. You know, the indications about that were I think on a preliminary basis suggestions that we have to have a discussion about expanding the existing port facility, and then that, you know, as we transition into more details about it, it seemed that has changed. Oh no, we need to look at other options. So now we've suddenly been given notice of this public consultation in relation to the new port facility, and questions around where it should go. We've been given, I think, maybe a week's notice at most, or just to over a week perhaps. And we're going to have 2 days of back-to-back meetings.
Yes.
And then a survey, which is a very leading survey, which is only open until August 2nd. So
yeah,
that's the most astonishing thing. I mean, we've just had the proposal from the government to adopt an Electoral Boundary Commission report, which they all decided they were going to vote against because they felt that there hadn't been sufficient public consultation. Now, I can tell you, I've been to a few of these now, and I didn't see any difference in public consultation. Historically, these do not have a lot of participation. But here we are. They decide they don't want to do it because there's insufficient public consultation. Now, in relation to this, this port facility, they want to have just 2 days compressed, a survey that's open to anybody. I don't know how they're going to determine whether they're Caymanians or not that are responding to that, or even necessarily in Cayman. Where does this take us? I think it's ridiculous, and I believe, and as I've said this before, I've hinted about it before, but this is one of the reasons why there's this drive to try to gut the National Conservation Act as well, and to remove the requirement for an environmental impact assessment on government projects, and to sort of remove proper consideration of planning decisions and project decisions by government in the context of proper scientific perspective and advice and knowledge and data. And I'm very concerned about it because this has this will again, it's going to be more expensive, much more expensive than extending the airport runway, for example. But that's another project that what are they going to not want an EIA for that now too? They don't want to. They're going to remove the requirement for an EIA for an inland port, cutting a channel which is probably going to be 200 to 300 feet wide through the Breakers Headland, going in, connecting up, bringing salt water in behind, into the heartland of the country. What kind of impact is that going to have on freshwater lenses? These are all incredibly important issues. We have no idea, and I know that's what the proposal is, right? That's what the intended objective is of this exercise, and it's really going to be a rushed box ticking exercise to try to put some pretend integrity around this decision to try to relocate this port to Breakers. And it is going to be a failure. It is going to be very obvious that this is what the government is trying to do. Not just the government, actually. There are many other parties who have been buying land around this area for some time now, with the objective of getting this done, and manipulating and pushing this agenda. What we need, as in so many things in this country, is we need proper planning. We need a data-based approach. We need science to be leading the discussions, and we need to be clear on the outcomes that we want to achieve as a country. Have we had any discussions with the people of this country about any of this stuff? No. Do we continue doing things in the same way and creating this massive surge in population with all the impacts that come from that, and without seemingly any thought to the need to manage this and how it's impacting our people, how it's impacting our national psyche? It's atrocious. When I was Premier, I was in the process of doing a request for proposal. Well, actually, it had gone out, a request for proposal for tendering on what was called a future trends report, which is about getting and maintaining and building on the data that should drive our decisions in the country. should underpin all of our policy approaches that would improve our quality of life, that would make sure that as a country we are we're doing right by our people, and we're prioritizing what we need to do, and reducing unnecessary spending. So we're targeting exactly what we need to achieve. What happened to that RFP? As soon as I left government, it was canceled. So apparently there's a perception that there's no need to gather data. There's no need to have a proper future trends report, which indicates where we should be focusing our attention. And when we do focus our attention in a particular area, the necessary data and information and science which drives the best result, the best outcomes. That's all irrelevant. Throw it away.
And that's been, oh my gosh, that's been canned as well. Mr. Panton, Wayne, wow, you're on a roll this morning, and I could sit here and listen to you for another hour, but I do have a 10 o'clock appointment, unfortunately, so that I've got to run to. But can we pick up these conversations, because these are bigger conversations, really, that must be had continually in this country about how we come about prioritizing the things that are important in terms of future development in the country, and what is in the best interest of the people of the Cayman Islands. I mean, fundamentally, that is what you're talking about here.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
in terms of this cargo port, let me just remind you guys, the Cargo Port Redevelopment Project is hosting 2 public meetings. Yesterday, I also questioned, just this weekend on Saturday, we were reached out to say, hey, can you let the public know about these meetings? They're running a couple adverts on social media. I found it to be very short amount of space, like 6 days, not even a full week, not even 6 days. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, but I'm going to give you all the information. So there's a meeting this evening at the Vault at the Compass Center from 6:30 p.m. until 9 p.m. And then tomorrow evening, Thursday, August the 1st, from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Church of God Chapel there on Shamrock Road in Bodden Town. There's also the online forum, which a lot of people have the link, and we'll share that link again on social media. Please, I guess, see how you can participate in this. Mr. Panton has obviously expressed some concerns, saying that he thinks this is just a box checking exercise, but nonetheless, I guess, speak to your representatives and let them have your thoughts, fill out the form as much as possible. I haven't looked at the form yet to see exactly what it says, but tomorrow we're going to continue the conversation. I know, Mr. Panton, unfortunately you're traveling, or I would invite you back on tomorrow's program, because I feel like there's so much more that we could be discussing. But can we maybe invite you back on the week of the 12th of August when we're back on air, because I'm actually going away myself, or the following week, and we can kind of pick up the conversation on some of these matters. We're going to take a quick phone call. I'm going to ask the caller to be as brief as possible. Good morning, caller.
Hey, morning, Auntie Sandy.
Morning.
Good morning to former Premier Panton, Johan Moxham here.
Morning.
Very, very interesting topic and discussion you guys are having. Let me jump straight into it. In light of the plans or aspirations for these projects, is there a commitment or something from the government that is guiding us as to what our targeted population growth will be, should be, and how and when did we make that decision, and were the people consulted? Because we're talking about growth and all of these things that could potentially happen, but surely we have to understand the limitations of our country from an infrastructure perspective and the costs associated with unsustainable population growth, where if you go to 150, 200,000 people, you got to plan for those things, and in Cayman we don't seem to plan a lot. So I just wanted to confirm with the former premier if he is aware or was aware of any, what exactly is the goal that we're trying to get to in order to satisfy and justify these expensive and large-scale projects, because the information and that sort of target or goal must be what we're using to move forward with the decisions, or at least I would think that's the case. So that's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Can you answer that in a minute or less?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is there has been no effort to ask the people of this country what they want and what kind of country we want. and whether we should be striving to grow at all costs, or whether they prefer managed growth, which improves opportunities and the quality of life for them and their children. And this, this ambush type public consultation in a very compressed timeline is an example of an attempt to just tick a box and to move on with this a proposal which may cost $1 billion over years. So, the waste energy facility is something that we can't afford, right? But now we're going to go and do a project which has immense social, economic, and environmental damage without talking to the people of this country and asking what kind of country do we want, without trying to get proper systems and data management and evidence in place, empirical analysis in place, which says how we should be doing this and how and whether we should be controlling growth in order to best create a wonderful Cayman Islands that we all want.
Okay. So thank you so much.
So there's a lot more to talk about. Yes. And I will continue to talk about these things because it just seems that special interests seem to think that they can control everything around here, and they certainly seem to have the ability to control members of government and sometimes other politicians. We need transparency, and we need proper strategic approaches to addressing the problems. Otherwise, the problems are going to be getting worse and worse, and our quality of life is going to deteriorate more and more rather than get better.
All right. On that note, thank you very much, folks. We'll be back here tomorrow morning at 7:30. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Cold Hard Truth on Bobo 89.1 FM. Cayman's #1 talk show is live weekdays from 7:30 a.m. Never miss an episode again. Watch anytime on CMR's Facebook and YouTube channels for the latest show episodes. Don't forget to follow us online on our social media channels. And visit CaymanMarlRoad.com for all the latest news and community happenings.